Hello trainers, Professor Palm here, and like many of you, I cannot believe that we're almost at the end of 2023. We're in December. My, time really does fly by. Today, I thought we should do something really fun to mark the final month of the year. We're gonna do a top 10 list. That's right, I can think of 10 incredible facts today that I wish to share with all of you. I am a Pokemon professor after all, and it's my job to share research with trainers like you. One of my favorite Pokemon of all time is Eevee. There's so much to talk about this amazing evolution Pokemon. It does so much, and it can evolve into so many other Pokemon. And because of that incredible family line, there's so much to talk about with the Eeveelutions. In fact, I can think of 10 facts that you may or may not know about the Eeveelutions, and I think that would be really cool to learn. The Eeveelution line is probably the biggest family line in the entire world of Pokemon. And with big families, there's a lot of fun things that you can learn about them. So let's learn the top 10 facts about the Eeveelutions. Number 10, Eeveelution is an official term. With a huge fandom the Pokemon community has, it's oftentimes that fans come up with a fan term to describe something, as the franchise has been around for many years. Pokemon fans have coined many terms over the 27 years that Pokemon has been around. Terms like pseudo-legendary, regional bird, box art legendary, the list goes on. However, unlike all of these other fan terms, Eeveelution actually became a real term used by the Pokemon Company, and it happened a lot earlier than you may expect. The Pokemon Company started using the fan term Eeveelution officially as early as Generation 2, but the first time this ever happened was in the game Pokemon Stadium 2. When looking through the official guidebook of Pokemon Stadium 2, the name Eeveelution is used, and it was later used in a Pokemon card TCG pack known as the Eeveelution. And in the spin-off game, Pokemon Ranger Shadows of Almaya, if you check the Pokedex officially calls the line the Eeveelution line. It's pretty crazy to think that an original fan term, Eeveelution, became official by the Pokemon Company. Good on you, Pokemon fans. Let's hope that in the future, other fan terms officially become real things for the other Pokemon Company. Who knows what to aim for next? But we know that shiny Pokemon has been made official. Maybe the next thing we'll get is pseudo-legendary. Number 9. Everyone learns a move of their typing as soon as they evolve. Eevee has always been a unique Pokemon, and evolving it has always been rather simple, as there's several ways that it can evolve into different Pokemon. You can use either stones, level Eevee up with high friendship during the day or the night, level Eevee up by a certain rock in a specific place, or give it a lot of affection by playing with it, feeding it, and giving it lots of pets. As amazing as the family line is, however, the Eeveelution's learning moves was another story. Back then, when you chose an Eeveelution, you had to be lucky not to evolve an Eeveelution too early or too late, as the Eeveelutions can learn certain moves of their typing at other levels, which oftentimes made things really crazy to pinpoint. I guess after all these years, Pokemon finally took the message that people were sick of using TMs or whatever they could to teach their Eeveelution moves that correspond to their typing. Thanks to Generation 7, that's no longer the case, as they introduced the neat gimmick, Evolution move. Oftentimes when you evolve your Pokemon, they learn a move at a certain level. Now, Pokemon that evolve with an evolution move learn it immediately off the bat as they evolve. This means that when Eevee evolves into one of the current 8 Eeveelutions, right off the bat, it learns a move that corresponds with its typing, which is awesome! Okay, maybe it's not the most awesome thing out there, as soon as you evolve one of your Eeveelutions, it learns one of the most basic moves for its typing, like Ember, Water Gun, Thunder Shock, and Razor Leaf. But hey, it's only the beginning, and with much more time, they'll learn much more powerful moves to come. It's just great to know that all the Eeveelutions learn a move through Levolution at any level. So yeah, even at level 100 or even level 1, they'll learn that move immediately off the bat. Number 8. Generation 8 changed Eeveelution forever. In the beginning, Eevee could only evolve into 3 different Pokemon, being Vaporeon, Jolteon, and Flareon, when exposed to one of 3 stones, being the Water Stone, the Thunder Stone, and the Fire Stone. When Generation 2 came out, it introduced the day and night cycle as well as friendship, and it also introduced 2 new Eeveelutions that benefited as well as could be evolved into by this. it introduced Espeon, who could evolve with high friendship during the day, as well as Umbreon, who could evolve with high friendship during the night. Then Generation 4 introduced two new Eeveelutions, being Leafeon and Glaceon, who evolved in a rather spectacular way as they had to be leveled up in a certain area by a certain rock, being either the Moss Rock or the Ice Rock. And of course, Generation 6 introduced Sylveon, who can only be evolved into Eevee by knowing one Fairy-type move, as well as having High Affection introduced in Pokemon Amie, which either meant giving it a lot of food, rubbing it, or playing lots of games with your little Eevee before it evolved. A lot of us were expecting Generation 8 to give us a brand new Eeveelution. However, Generation 8 changed the Eeveelution game forever, as it got rid of both of the evolution rocks, so Eevee could not find any of those evolution rocks in the Galar region to turn into either Leafeon or Glaceon. It also abolished Pokemon Amie, so yeah, you cannot show affection by rubbing your Pokemon playing games or even feeding them anymore. So the need of affection was also gone. What were they to do? Well, Pokemon Sword and Shield decided to take a different approach to evolving your Eevee into either Leafeon or Glaceon. Instead of using the rocks that you could use, they decided to go back to the original way. And that old way is by using the stones. So now if you want to evolve your Eevee into Leafeon, you have to expose it to a Leaf Stone. And if you want your Eevee to evolve into Glaceon, you now have to expose it to an Ice Stone. Which also is pretty interesting to think that now Eevee evolves the most amount of ways with stones. Now it has a total of 5 stones that it can use to turn into 5 different evolutions. Because of Generation 6 and 9 no longer having Pokemon Amie as it was abolished in those games, this does make Sylveon still obtainable, but a little more difficult, as you do need to play more with your Eevee as well as feed it curry as well as make it a sandwich. Also, because this also raises friendship, this can be a little bit of a challenge. If you want to evolve your Eevee into Sylveon, make sure it has a Fairy-type move. Otherwise, raising its affection as well as friendship might evolve it into an Espeon or an Umbreon, depending on what time of the day it is. So make sure it always has a Fairy-type move. But this can also be kind of fun, as you can oftentimes see it evolving into one or the other. It's up to you what you want it to turn into. While it is pretty impressive that now Eevee can evolve when being exposed to the Leaf Stone and the Ice Stone, this does bring up a major problem now. Does this mean back in the Generation 1 games, it was possible that Leafeon could have been obtained, but just wasn't because it wasn't on the Pokedex? Also, in the Let's Go Eevee and Let's Go Pikachu games, since we have Ice Stones, is it also possible that we could have gotten ourselves a Glaceon? Well, I know these Pokemon were introduced in Generation 4, but it leaves a big plot hole as we could have gotten these Pokemon earlier than we did on the Pokedex. Number 7. Jolteon is the smallest Eeveelution. No Eeveelution is the same, as they all have a different typing and a different appearance. However, also, every single one of them has a different size in height. Most of the Eeveelution line stands at a height of 3'3", being Vaporeon, Umbreon, Leafeon, and Sylveon, while some Eeveelutions stand at only 2'7", being Espeon and Flareon. And then we have Jolteon and Glaceon, who are the shortest of the bunch. Glaceon sure is short, as it stands roughly at 2'8". And then there's Jolteon. As I said, it's the short stack of the bunch, as Jolteon is only the height of 2'7", making it the smallest Eeveelution we currently have. Other than being the shortest of the bunch, Jolteon also lacks something that every single Eeveelution has, and it's the only one without. And you guessed right, it does not have a tail. So lacking a tail may explain why Jolteon is the shortest of the bunch, as everyone else has long, beautiful tails, as it has none. It's pretty cute that Jolteon is the standout from the rest, not just because it's lacking a tail, and not just because it's the short one, but also Jolteon is the lightest of all Eeveelutions. I guess that makes sense. After all, this is one of the fastest Eeveelutions alive, and while it may be a short stack, it definitely makes up with one big thing it has on it, its heart. Yep, you'll never be another friendlier Eeveelution, unlike Jolteon. Number 6. All Eeveelutions have a special stat to them. It's probably redundant to say this, but every Eeveelution is unique, not just because of their typing and the power they have, but every single one of them has a stat that they're the master of. Oh, and if you really like to battle competitively, then add any of these to your team because they can be very powerful. Every Eeveelution has one special stat that has a maximum of 130 power. So if we're going to talk about every Eeveelution and what they're the master of, Vaporeon has the highest HP of all Eeveelutions at 130. Jolteon has the highest speed stat of the bunch as it has a speed of 130 for power. Flareon has the highest base stat attack of the entire Eeveelutions at a total of 130 base power. For highest base stat for special attack, we have a tie between Glaceon and Espeon, as each of them have 130 power for their base stat special attack. When it comes to the strongest of the special defenders, we have Umbreon and Sylveon, who have 130 base stat power for both of their special defenses. And finally, for the Master of Defense, we have Leafeon, who has the 130 base stat total for defense. And with all those attacks that are super effective on it, it's really going to need all of that defense it gets. For those of you who like to battle competitively and are looking to have an Eeveelution on your team, especially for the Ivies and Eevees, you can add any single one you want to their team, as they all have a specialty. Whether it be a team that has the highest HP stat, the fastest speed stat, the toughest attack stat, the strongest defense stat, or teams that specialize in the special stats being the special attack stat and the special defense stat, all the Eeveelutions have you covered, as they each have a special stat of 130 for a single impressive stat. On a rather interesting note, every single one of them is equal, as everyone's base stat total adds up to exactly 525. Number 5. FireRed, LeafGreen, HeartGold, and SoulSilver had semi-limited Eeveelutions. Pokemon FireRed and LeafGreen were the first remakes in the entire core series games, and I must say, they did an amazing job remaking your original Kanto playthrough adventures, which was a lot of fun. It was great to go back to a time when there was only 151 Pokemon. And as for the Eevees, we went back to the original roots. Those were the good old days when Eevee could evolve into one of 3 different Pokemon when exposed to a stone. Since this was a Generation 3 game, when we finally moved to the Game Boy Advance SP and also had the Hoenn region, you could transfer from the Hoenn region and the Kanto region and do so much to complete your Pokédex. As cool as the trading from so many other games function was, there was a little bit of a problem if you were trying to complete the Pokédex in your Kanto games, as it was impossible. Obtaining the National Dex from Professor Oak also unlocked Friendship. That's right, so many Pokemon that evolved in the Kanto region for these games could not evolve anymore, as the Friendship mechanic was locked. With it unlocked, now you could complete your Pokédex with Pokemon that were introduced in Generations 1 and 2 and evolved with high Friendship. However, there was a little bit of a problem with Eevee. You see, Eevee in either FireRed or LeafGreen was unable to evolve into either Espeon or Umbreon. It's actually kind of incredible that it couldn't even evolve into Espeon. Even though it was daytime all the time, there was not a real clock. So, Eevee would always stay the same no matter how much friendship you gave it. This made the Eeveelutions in Generation 3 for the games of FireRed and LeafGreen semi-limited, as the only way that you could evolve your Eevee into either Umbreon or Espeon was to trade it to either Emerald, Sapphire, or Ruby and have it evolve in either the day or night and then trade it back. This was sadly not the last time Eeveelutions were semi-limited. When Pokemon Diamond and Pearl came out, they introduced 2 brand new Eeveelutions to the family. It of course introduced those members being Glaceon and Leafeon. Grass and Ice were finally added to all of the Eeveelutions, and they fit so snugly. Generation 4 has been known for making some really great games. Other than Diamond and Pearl, they remade Gold and Silver with HeartGold and SoulSilver. Some fans even claim that these are some of the greatest remakes ever made, and I honestly agree. I'll also say that they really made it go all out for the DS era. However, just like with Umbreon and Espeon being semi-limited in the Generation 3 games of FireRed and LeafGreen, Glaceon and Leafeon were semi-limited in the Generation 4 games of HeartGold and SoulSilver. This is because the Pokemon Company designed HeartGold and SoulSilver to be as accurate to the original games as possible. Also, you couldn't use a Leaf Stone or even an Ice Stone to evolve them, as that gimmick had not turned out yet. Also, an Ice Stone did not exist, and since there were no Ice Rocks or Moss Rocks, there was no possible way for you to get your Eevee to evolve into Leafeon or Glaceon unless you trade it to Diamond or Pearl or Platinum. Kinda sad that you could not get a full Eeveelution family as you had to trade them from every single game. But finally, we officially got a remake that you could get every single Eeveelution in with Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, as these games finally made it possible for Eevee to evolve into every single current Eeveelution, as they added the Moss Rock and the Ice Rock. So, finally, Generation 6 gave us a remake game where every Eeveelution was obtainable and not needed with trading. Number 4, URSULA'S Eevees were the first on-screen evolution into an Eeveelutions. It's no secret that Eevee is one of the most beloved and well-known Pokemon of Generation 1. There are so many people out there that really love this little evolution Pokemon. Some people even think it's the secondary mascot of all. Eevee has appeared in the anime under the ownership of so many trainers. Some of them have been some of Ash Ketchum's traveling companions, some of them being some of Ash Ketchum or even some of his travel companions' rivals. And sometimes Eevee as well as its Eeveelutions appear in the movies as well as mini-movies, just like with Eevee and Friends. As adorable as Eevee is in the anime and as big as its family it has, there was one thing that had never really been done before in the anime. Eevee had appeared in so many episodes, yet we had never seen Eevee evolve on screen. Every Eevee that we saw on the screen never evolved in the episode they were in, and every Eeveelution was evolved into by Eevee off screen. So, for the longest time, there was a big question, were we ever going to see Eevee evolve on screen? Well, after all these years of waiting, as well as seeing all the Eeveelutions that were introduced, finally, the Pokemon Diamond and Pearl anime gave us the first trainer to ever evolve their Eevee on screen into an Eeveelution. And of course, that was Dawn's rival, Ursula. Ursula may have been a rather harsh rival to Dawn, but she really doubled down when it comes to Eeveelutions, because not only did she evolve one Eevee on screen, she evolved two at once. During the Sinnoh Grand Festival, Ursula went all out for the judges. First, she sent out her Eevee, and then she tossed her Eevee a Firestone. As Eevee touched it, we saw the very first Eevee evolution on screen into Flareon. And right there, you knew that Ursula was going to go all out for the cool moves with those fire-type attacks. And then it just got even better. Ursula sent out a second Eevee, and then she tossed it a Water Stone, evolving it there, right on the spot, into Vaporeon. With the power of beauty and cool moves, Ursula sure put on an incredible show. While she may be a mean rival as well as a rather arrogant one, she really does know how to put on a spectacular performance, as well as really get the audience going. It's rather crazy to think that we had to wait till Diamond and Pearl to see our very first Eeveelution from Evolution. Well, I guess it was worth the wait. Though, I think it would have been a little bit better if we got to see Eevee evolve into either the new ones that were introduced in the Sinnoh region. On a rather interesting note, Serena was Ash's first traveling companion to ever evolve her Eevee on screen into Sylveon. And because of the amazing performances Serena had, as well as the beautiful outfits she made, Serena and Sylveon were a match made in heaven. Number 3. Jolteon and Sylveon have no weaknesses towards any other Eeveelutions, while Espeon has no strengths. Whenever you start an adventure or capture yourself any Pokemon in the wild, every Pokemon in the world has strengths and weaknesses. And the Eeveelution line is no different, as every single one of them is a single typing, so they have their own strengths and they also have their own weaknesses. Fire-type moves are super effective on Grass-type Pokemon. Water-type moves are super effective on Fire-type Pokemon. Electric-type moves are super effective on Water-type Pokemon. The list goes on. Most of the Eeveelutions, being single-type Pokemon, learn moves that are super effective on another Pokemon. So, a lot of the Eeveelutions have a weakness towards one another. However, for Jolteon and Sylveon, this is not the case. Mainly for the fact that both of these Eeveelutions have weaknesses to other typings that have not yet been current Eeveelutions. Being a pure electric type Pokemon, Jolteon only has weaknesses to moves that are ground type. While many of them can learn the move Dig, there is no Eevee that is a pure ground type. And also, if there was, Jolteon would also have no strength against it, as it would be completely immune to its power. And Sylveon, being a pure fairy type Pokemon, only has weaknesses to moves that are Poison type and Steel type. Seeing that we don't have an Eeveelution of either of them, and that not a lot of Eeveelutions can learn these moves, this is what makes Sylveon a cut above the rest, just like Jolteon, as it stands very strong. So, until we get an Eeveelution that is either a ground type, a poison type, or a steel type, both Jolteon and Sylveon will remain the only two Eeveelutions without any weakness towards any other Eeveelutions for the foreseeable future. And they might just be the strongest two out there. Espeon, on the other hand, just might have the worst problem of the family. Ironically, in the first games, Psychic had no weakness, but Sylveon also has no strength whatsoever towards any other Eeveelution. Psychic-type Pokemon also only have two strengths, being Poison-type and Fighting-type, as their Psychic-type moves do super effective damage to both of these typings. And seeing that we do not have an Eeveelution that is either Poison-type or Fighting-type currently, Sylveon will always remain the odd one out of the bunch. Even though Espeon doesn't have a strength like the rest of the Eeveelution lines, it does have something that makes it equal to the rest. It only has one weakness towards everyone else in the family, just like Glaceon, Umbreon, and Flareon. Maybe one day, finally we'll have all the Eeveelutions balanced out and everyone will have a strength and everyone will have a weakness. Until then, we can only hope that in the future we may get ourselves a Ground-type Eevee, a Poison-type Eevee, or even a Steel-type Eevee. There's so many typings out there and so many Eeveelutions that we could possibly get in new games. Number 2. The Eon meaning. While every Eeveelution is completely different as they have a different appearance as well as an entirely different typing, there's one thing that remains consistent about every single one of them. Every one of them has the name Eon. The reason for every Eeveelution having the name Eon in their name actually comes from Eevee. You see, Eevee was not originally given its name Eevee. Instead, it was given the name Eon. It was still going to be known as the Evolution Pokemon, but there was supposed to be a new twist on it. Other than Eon turning into an entirely new Pokemon, as well as a new typing when exposed to a stone, its name would also reflect how it changed entirely. Instead of just being Eon, now if it was exposed to a Thunderstone, it would be an electric type. So we'd add Jolt in front of it, and now it would be Jolt Eon. But if we exposed it to a Water Stone, it would now be a water type. So we now add Vapor in front of Eon to get Vaporeon. And the same thing with Flareon, exposing Eon to a Fire Stone, and we would get Flare Eon. Still, even though Eon's name was changed to Eevee, I still think that it's a good idea that everyone still has the reminiscence of what it used to be. And I think it's better that they decide to keep them all Eon, because can you imagine calling every single Eeveelution something with the name Eevee, like SP Eevee, or something like Umbrea Eevee? Yeah, I think it was better that they decided to keep the Eon. Evolving Eevee is a little bit like chemistry, because chemistry is the study of change, and Eevee turns into so many different Pokemon as well as gains a new typing. It's really cool to think that at one point it was going to be given a different name, and also the evolution would apply to that as well. Well, we still have the name Eevee. I will say, it's pretty cool that the Eon for the original name still sticks with the entire family line. Number 1. In Yellow, your battles with your rival determine his final Eeveelution. Pokemon Yellow was certainly an interesting game, as it was unlike any other. Instead of choosing a starter Pokemon and your rival chooses a starter Pokemon that's stronger than yours, you instead are given Pikachu by Professor Oak when he was originally intending to give you an Eevee only to be swiped by your rival. However, with a few new tweaks trying to make it a little bit like the anime, the story is still the same. You go on a journey with your Pikachu, catch plenty of Pokemon, and you also take on your rival from time to time with his Eevee. As time goes on, you'll eventually take on your rival and see that he's evolved his Eevee into a Jolteon, thanks to exposing it to the Thunderstone. Well, after the journey goes on, you take him on at the Indigo Plateau in the champion battle and win, ending the game on a high note, right? Well, what if I told you that there's actually multiple ways for this story to go? Your rival's Eeveelution is actually dependent on you about which battles you choose to have, as well as which battles you choose to win. If you win the battle at the lab and then you battle him on Route 22, the story will go the way of your rival evolving his Eevee into a Jolteon. But the Jolteon route is only one of the stories that you can make the story go. In fact, you're in complete control to make the story go the Flareon route. All you have to do is win the first battle at Professor Oak's lab, but then skip the second battle on Route 22. when you eventually take on your rival and they send out their evolved Eevee, it will instead be a Flareon. A few people may have seen this if they skipped the battle on Route 22, but if you haven't, there you go. So now you have the Flareon route. And of course, this being a Generation 1 game with all 3 Eeveelutions, there's a Vaporeon route to the story. But this is a way I think very few people have ever seen. You see, in order to get your rival to evolve their Eevee into a Vaporeon, you have to lose the first battle in Professor Oak's lab. Eventually, when you take on your rival to see their evolved Eevee, it'll be a Vaporeon. Now, a lot of us really don't like to lose battles, but it's pretty impressive to think that just to get this Pokemon, you have to lose the first fight. It's really impressive to think that your rival could have all 3 different Eeveelutions, but the way that his Eevee evolved all depends on you. Whether you throw the first fight, whether you win the first fight, or whether you choose to have every single battle will determine which way the story can go. Most stories can go many ways, but seeing that Eevee can evolve into so many different Pokemon, as well as seeing that it depends on which way you choose to go, really proves just how incredible and how outstanding these Pokemon truly are. Did you like my list, trainers? Comment below if you did or if you didn't. But if you really liked it, what other top 10 lists should I make? Also, I have a few questions for you. What was the first game you ever had an Eevee in? And also, out of all 8 Eeveelutions, who was your first? Who's your favorite Eeveelution of all time, as well as what move is your favorite that they can learn? If Generation 10 introduces a brand new typing as well as a brand new Eeveelution, should the Eeveelution be of that typing, or should it be of a typing that we already have? Do you think that there's more facts that I could talk on about the Eeveelutions, or are 10 enough for you? Well, trainers, if you liked what you saw, please leave a like. If you have any questions, you want me to do another top 10 list, you want me to cover another Pokemon line, or you want me to talk about something going on in Pokemon current events, then please comment. And as always, if you liked what you saw and you want to see more, please smash that subscribe button. And of course, feel free to share this video to all other trainers out there. As a Pokemon professor, it's my job to teach trainers like you. Thanks for watching, trainers. Palm out!